Hello, welcome back. So in the previous tutorial we had made this plate. So we're going to move on to the second part of this where we're going to go to motion tracking and we're going to open up our piece of video which is on our desktop. It's called Table. I'm going to open that clip. There it is. Now we're going to, so at the moment if I press play, it plays for a good 250 frames. No, it stops after, where do we end? So I'm going to stop this here. So we end at 140 something. So I'm going to stop it at 100 frames. So I'm going to go, my endpoint is going to be 100. Now, we will do longer shots than this, but just for a tutorial, there's no need for me to, once the methodology is correct for 4 seconds, which is what 100 frames will be, it will also be correct for 8 seconds or 10 seconds or 20 seconds. But just for ease of rendering, we'll do it this way. So here's my piece of video. We've got our plate already made. It's up here. And we've done this before, so let's just go straight into our creation process. We're going to do a couple of extra steps this time. So I'm going to say detect features, and it has, it's detected a good few. Keep in mind our magic number is 8. To create an additional point, I can hold down the control key and left click and just add in more points, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go G and see if I can add them in at a point of contrast in the wood, or something like this on sort of a knot in the wood. So I'll left click there and go G and add one there. Now, under better circumstances, we would have got better video. But I'm going to right click on this guy here and I'm going to leave him there. I'm going to delete this one though, and this one, because they're on objects that are not at the same height as the counter. This one's on the chair here. I'm going to delete that. Same with these. So these are not, they might track well, but they're not massively useful. So I'm going to see if I can find more points on this table that are continuously in shot that will work well for us as reference points for our track. And there should be plenty of them. Now we can track the objects as well, the bottle, etc. The bottle will be an interesting one it'll give us a vertical plane, although we don't really need one in this scene. So let's see if we can find more blemishes in this wood. And I'll see how many of these actually stick. So we have a good few in there at the moment, and we'll see how they work. So I'm going to go A and select them all, and as we did before, I'm just going to go down to our tracking settings here and track forward because I'm on frame 1. So we've lost one up here. 2. So if you look at this as sort of the track here, you can see, let me make this a bit bigger. So the start of the track, everything's working well, and then there's a few that are giving us terrible results here. So I'm going to take this one here, this red one, I'm going to delete it, and this one, and that one, and that one. And let's just play ourselves back. and we can zoom in here and select the track based on, so this is this one here, so this is not responding terribly well. And where's that one? It's this one here. Okay, they're not too bad. So we've auto detected these features and added in a couple, and we've tracked. Okay, so we'll go back to frame 1, and then as before we're going to go into solve. Now we had to change these numbers before, so frame 1 became frame 300 I think, and then frame 30 became frame 330. So this sort of has a little dip here around frame 27, so I'm going to say frame 27 is a frame of interest to us. I'm going to go back to frame 1, I'm going to hit solve, and it's giving us a dreadful solve error of 40. So this is yep, not very good. So let's see how we can improve upon our solve error here. So the first thing is this this one here is actually picked up something on the floor. So I'm going to delete that. I'm going to delete that. And that looks a little bit better. So we'll select them all. And I'm going to go back to track. I'm going to track them forward again. And then I'm going to go back to solve and hit solve camera motion. And we've a dramatic change from 40 to 0.7. So this is a much better result for tracking our surface. Now we could probably go in and refine this a bit more, so I'm going to try and change this frame here. I made a big difference the last time, so around frame 78 here. So I'm going to put in 78. Oh, that's 57, 78, there we go. And bring us back to the start, and I'm going to hit solve again. And it hasn't made a big difference, but it's still 0.78 or 79. Okay, so 0.79 is, as I said to you before in class, anything below 1 is it's fairly good. So it means that we've less than 1 pixel of slippage as we track. But the lower the better. If you can get it down to 0.1, 0.2, these are much better results. Okay, but we'll go with what we have for now, seeing as we're on under a time constraint. So this is sort of where we stopped before, and we click these 2 buttons. But before we do that, we want to set our origin in 3D space. So I'm going to select this, deselect everything, and select this vert here, and I'm going to set origin. So this is now the origin, so 0, 0, 0 in my world, which is where my plate is. So my plate's going to go here. And then I need to set a scale. So, but I want to set a floor as well. So I'm going to, how do I set my floor? So this is my origin. I'm going to shift and select this guy, and shift and select that guy. So if you can imagine there's a triangle between them. They're all on the same plane. So I'm going to click that as floor. And if I put the mouse over it, you can see it says set plane based on 3 selected or 3 selected bundles. So now I've set my plane, and then finally I want to set my scale. So I'm going to deselect everything, select these 2 verts here, or these 2, not verts, these 2 tracking markers, and by default in Blender, now we haven't actually set the scale to be metric, but where are we? So it says unit presets. So we're using the default units behave like meters. So this is about 12, maybe 15 centimeters. So If this is 1 meter, then 15 centimeters is 0.15. Let's say 0.13, just to be in the middle. So it's 0.13. And so I'm going to hit apply scale, and the scale will be applied, or set scale, sorry, to okay, so Blender's now going to know that this is that distance. So now with those done, so I've set the origin, marked the floor, set the scale, and applied the scale. Now I'm going to say set as background and set up tracking scene. Okay, so I'm going to go File, Save As, and we're going to call this Plate Track. Now, and I'm going to go back to my default UI layout. Okay. So we're going to come out of rendered mode for a minute and go into solid mode and see what we have. So first of all, you'll notice that in terms of positioning, the camera is very close to the plate, and so are all of the markers. So let's just look through the camera. So the plate is not the scale or the size we want, but there is our image, and we're going to press play, which is, if you don't have play on screen, Alt-A is the shortcut for play. So let's take our plate and go, let's look from the top, and we want to move the plate that direction, and we're going to scale it up and look through our camera again. And in this tutorial we're not going to do any masking. It is possible to mask out this so that the plate can go behind it, and that obviously adds an extra level of realism to the track, and I'll be showing you how to do that shortly. But at the moment we're just going to we're not going to do that. So let's Alt-A and have a look at the track. Okay, and now I'm going to change to rendered. I'm going to take this plate, which is selected here, and I'm going to go GZ, just move it up a tiny bit so it's not so close to that plane. I'm just going to press F12, which is render a frame, and see what we get. And what it's rendering now is the shadow, so it's like it has to render twice. Now by clicking the set background or set as background, this was set up for us. Now we'll go in and we'll change the sample rate so this doesn't take so long to render, and we'll also play around with some of the settings that we have. We'll have a look at, do we need a shadow, and how the shadow works a little bit. So first thing so it looks good. The plate's too dark, so we need to fix that compared to these two items here. And the shadow is pointed in the wrong direction. So the shadow's off to the right, and the shadow from this is off to the left. So let's fix the shadow first in terms of its directionality. So I'm going to hit Escape and go into Top View, and we're going to zoom out and have a look for where's this light. So here's my light here. I'm going to go G and move the light over to here, and I'm just going to control up for a second. Now we're going to go back into rendered mode here. So at the moment the light is a point light, so I can make that a hemi, and if I go G, actually it's OR I want to do, so I want to rotate the light. And you can see that the shadow is shifting from one side to the other. So that's approximately the same as the shadow from that's on the other items. And then when I select it here, I want to make it brighter. So we can have a look at what nodes we've got for that. So I've got a color node here, and I can got brightness and contrast. So this would be our way of doing that. So again, we can go into our rendered mode and make this brighter. Let me just delete that, and I'll show you what I've done wrong there. So I'm going to move this forward, and I've just added that in the wrong place. So I can now increase the brightness. Now I need to be careful not to do it too much, or we will end up with so we'll say 0.04. Okay, so now let's press F12 and see what we get. So it's definitely a lighter color, and when we render true on the shadow should be in a better direction. Now keep in mind, if we had a moving light source, for example, we can animate the light and animate the shadow. We can do all sorts of cool and interesting things with this. So it's quite a versatile sort of setup. So there's our plate, and the shadow's not too bad. I still need to sort of, it's just too much on this side. We need to have it more coming out this way. If you can look inside the bowl here, you can see sort of a semicircle, so it's more pointing from right to left than up and down. So we'll rotate this, so we'll select our lamp and rotate it that way, so that our shadow is more in keeping with this. And then we will go back to our node editor and select on this, and what we want is one last thing that we'll do. So it's going to press B. Whoops, where's B? There's B. So move this out of the way. I'm going to add in a mix shader. Put that in there, and now it's got darker because I could have it 100% here, or I can have it 100% what's going to go in on this bottom one. So we'll get to that now. And what I'm going to mix in is I'm going to mix in a transparent shader. So now we can set how transparent our object is. I just want to put that in because the other objects are slightly transparent in terms of they're made of kind of light plastic. So before I hit render on this one, I'm just going to change a few settings here. So I'm going to change from CPU to GPU rendering. I am going to reduce the samples from 120 just for demonstration purposes to 50. Make that to 10. That's just for what it shows in this window here. I'm going to go to performance and change this to 512. And this is the size of the area in each render panel. And I'm going to go to light passes and set the maximum to be 6 there, and there, and there, and there. And that will just speed things up a little bit. And so we're going to export a full HD Actually, let's leave it at 50% just for ease of computation. It might take too long to render otherwise. We want AVI raw so we can play back video. We'll put it onto our desktop and we'll call this plate. Okay, so I'm going to save this. Now before I render it out as an animation, I'm just going to hit render and see what my finished frame looks like. So the size of each render area is set to 512 by 512, so instead of seeing lots of small squares, it's rendering in larger chunks, but it should be a faster render. So the last render took 37 seconds, and hopefully this one will be a bit quicker. It may not. This is the shadow. And hopefully it'll give us a finished frame. So you can see the sample count here. So I've set this to 50, and this is working out sample number 31. And the higher the sample count, the less noise we'll get in, the less fizz, which in this example isn't terribly worrying, having a bit of fizz, because the video itself, because it was shot in the evening in very low light, under kind of tungsten light in the kitchen, the video itself is really fizzy, so a little bit of fizz in this object won't ruin things. Okay, so what we need to do now, and it'll take too long to do this in this video, so I'm going to tag this on at the end. I'm going to hit animate, and it's going to give me 100 frames of this, and we're going to see just how well the movement looks with the plate in position with its shadow sitting on the countertop like that. So I'm going to stop this video now, and then I will put alongside it the finished render, which is basically me hitting the animate button now.